Do you ever look at a global crisis on the news and just wonder, how does it all fit together? Why do some countries team up while others seem to be in a constant power struggle? The world of international politics, it can feel messy, really complex. But what if I told you there are special lenses, these powerful theories, that can bring the whole picture into focus? Well, today, we're going to look through those lenses.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with why this stuff even matters. Then we're diving into the big two, realism and liberalism. After that, we'll look at some theories that challenge those mainstream ideas, before we wrap it all up by showing you how to use all these lenses together. So, let's jump right in. In a world that feels like it's always changing, always in motion, getting a handle on what drives nations is, well, it's more important than ever.
I mean, these are the huge questions, right? The kind that keep diplomats and world leaders up at night. And this isn't just some academic exercise. We're talking about real-world stuff. War and peace, trade deals and climate summits. The very fabric of how countries get along, or don't, on the world stage.
To really get today's world, you gotta look back. The whole system of countries we have now didn't just pop into existence. It really started way back in 1648 with this thing called the Treaty of Westphalia. That's what gave us the idea of a sovereign state. From there, it evolved through world wars, which led to the Cold War, where the world was pretty much split into two camps. And since 1991, we've been in what some call a multiplex world. It's messy, everyone's connected, and it's not just about countries anymore.
Okay, so let's get into our first, and you could argue our most influential lens, realism. If you want the gritty, no-nonsense, maybe even cynical take on how the world really works, this is where you start.
And the whole idea goes back to the philosopher Thomas Hobbes. He basically said that without a government, life would just be a chaotic free-for-all. So realists take that idea of a state of nature and they apply it to the entire planet. See, there's no world government, right? So we're in a state of anarchy. And that creates what they call the security dilemma. When one country builds up its military to feel safer, it just makes its neighbors feel less safe, so they arm themselves, and on it goes.
And for realists, everything flows from this logic. First, states are the only actors that really matter. Second, the world they live in is anarchic. So, what's their number one goal? Survival. It has to be. And that means a constant, never-ending struggle for power, because at the end of the day, you can only rely on yourself. That's the core idea of self-help.
This is a fantastic way to picture the realist worldview, the billiard ball model. Just imagine each country is a solid billiard ball. What's going on inside, their government, their culture, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is their power as they bounce off and collide with each other on the world's pool table. Alliances, they're just temporary. Collisions, pretty much inevitable.
But hang on. What if countries aren't just hard-shelled billiard balls? What if there's more to the story than just power, power, power? Well, that brings us to liberalism. It's the great challenger to realism, and it offers a much more optimistic vision of a world built on rules and cooperation.
Now, what's so fascinating here is that liberals actually agree with realists on that one big thing. The world is anarchic. But they look at that fact and come to a totally different conclusion. Where a realist sees anarchy and says conflict is inevitable, a liberal looks at the same world and says, yeah, but cooperation is totally possible and it's actually the smart move. How? Through things like international organizations, global trade, and the spread of democracy.
And here we have the perfect answer to the billiard ball model, the cobweb model. Forget isolated states colliding. Instead, picture a massive, intricate cobweb of connections between governments, companies, organizations, people, all of it tangled together. This creates something called complex interdependence. And in this world, starting a war isn't just a collision, it's like ripping a giant hole in the web. It's incredibly expensive and damaging for everyone, not just the two countries fighting. So how do you actually build this web? Well, liberals have a cool strategy called functionalism. You can think of it as building piece by pieces. The logic is really clever. You don't start with the biggest, toughest problems, no way. You start with the technical, doable stuff where it's easier to agree. The classic example is how the European Union started, by cooperating on coal and steel. When you succeed on those smaller things, it builds trust and creates a spillover effect, making it easier to then cooperate on the really tough political stuff later on.
Okay, so we've got this world of power clashing with a world of rules. But some thinkers look at both of those ideas and say you're both missing the point. They want us to challenge the whole system. And that brings us to the critical lenses.
So take the Marxist lens, shown here through something called dependency theory. It completely flips the script. This isn't about states fighting for security. Nope. It's about a global economic system that's built on exploitation. Wealthy core nations stay rich by actively keeping the poorer periphery nations down, taking their cheap labor and raw materials. From this point of view, global inequality isn't an accident. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly the way it's supposed to.
And other critical theories ask equally tough questions. Feminist theory, for example, looks at world politics and asks something so simple but so powerful. Where are the women? It suggests that our whole idea of security and power is seen through a male-dominated lens, which is why it's so focused on competition and conflict. Then there's post-colonialism. It challenges the stories we tell ourselves about history, arguing that so much of what we call international relations is really just the story of Europe and its colonies, and that this biased perspective still shapes power and inequality today, long after the empires are gone.
So, we have a world of power, a world of rules, and a world built on injustice. It's a lot to take in, right? The real question isn't which one is correct. It's how can we use all of them to actually see things more clearly?
And that's really the heart of it all. None of these theories is the perfect answer for everything. The best way to think about them is like tools in a toolkit. Each lens helps you focus on a different part of the problem. Realism makes you pay attention to power. Liberalism shows you the potential for cooperation. And critical theories force you to ask about fairness and justice. The absolute best, most complete understanding comes from knowing how and when to use all of them.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you see a big global headline, whether it's a trade war, a climate conference, or a conflict somewhere, try looking at it through these different lenses. Ask yourself, is this just a raw power struggle? Is it an effort to build new rules? Or is it a story about old injustices playing out today? The lens you choose, it changes everything. And that right there is why this stuff matters so much.